What's up, everybody? Izzy back again with another Q&A today. Some back and bicep training. Without further ado, though, let's get to the first question. What are some of your lift goals for the next massing phase? So when I first saw this question, I was not looking forward to answering it because my answer is going to spawn like a million questions that I don't want to answer, but I'll do it anyway. I think when you get poor results, or at least results that aren't as good as you were expecting, that serves as a prompt for self-reflection. And when I look back at the results that I got or didn't get last year, it mostly comes down to the fact that I overvalued strength progressions. That got me hurt because I willed progressions to be there that my body didn't necessarily have using psychology. It kept me using lifts that I was being competitive with, even when they weren't what was best for my physique. It led to me letting my technique get looser than it needed to be more often than I should have done to hit certain plates per side goals. It led to me prioritizing volume levels that were optimized for strength progression rather than optimized for the best muscle gains. And it led to me accepting rates of body weight gain that were too fast and even pushing my body weight too high in general, because both of those things are, of course, good for explosive strength gains. And I could go on, but the mentality of valuing trying to hit certain milestones on lifts, I feel like has probably been overall a net negative for me in the past year. So I'm just going to let go of that. And my actual goal for the next hypertrophy massing phase is to actually try and become a better bodybuilder, actually bring up my weak points, actually add, 10, 15 solid pounds of muscle so I don't embarrass myself when I get on stage in the next year. My goals for the next massing phase are more process-oriented. I want to make sure that I keep my technique optimized for as long as possible. I want to maintain good eccentric control and pauses, especially on pressing movements, to see if I can get rid of the repetitive pec strains that I've been having. My goal is to obviously improve my lifts as much as possible. I think a lot of bodybuilders skew way too far in the direction of not caring about strength at all, to the point where some of them don't even program. They just go in and do random stuff. That will never be me. I will always care about adding as much strength as possible, but I'm not going to select certain plates per side goals or things of that nature that might lead to ego getting involved, trying to progress too fast, loosening technique, or any of that. Because I'd like to, at the end of the next massing phase, have a dramatically improved physique with weak points that have been brought up. Is it safe for the machine for me to use a GymPin and add weight? I should probably talk to the owner first, right? It is definitely safe. The vast majority of pins, cable setups, etc., it's able to handle double or triple the load of the weight stack that's actually on it. That said, if you do work out at a private gym where you're able to talk to the owner, I think that's a common courtesy. That's a good idea. I mean, I personally have been asked by the gym owner at the gym that I currently go to not use too much weight on the gym pins. So, it is something that gym owners are going to be concerned with. That said, if you work out at a 24-hour fitness or Gold's Gym or something that's a big chain, honestly, it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, because it'll probably be no if you ask. I can get a higher 1 rep max in the 8 to 12 rep range than the 6 to 10 rep range. And I also progress faster. Is this a better stimulus to fatigue ratio? So you don't know if you can get a higher 1 rep max. What you're talking about is estimated 1 rep max. And as I've said recently, and I'll say again, estimated 1 rep max is not a real thing. What you're doing is taking a formula and it's spitting out a number, and you're taking that formula at face value and assuming that it truly is accurate. And chances are it's not actually accurate. Your estimated 1 rep max has absolutely no bearing on hypertrophy, and it doesn't determine whether something is a better SFR. However, what you said next does matter, and you're saying you're progressing better in that rep range, then yeah, have at it. I mean, if you're adding more weight, adding more reps more quickly, that's always a good thing. So go ahead and stick with 8 to 12 then. Why do you think the sex rate is so much lower for 18 to 24-year-olds than it used to be? Spend all day on their phone. And it used to be and I'm overgeneralizing here completely, but it used to be nerds hung out in their own little cliques, right? Or people just had different cliques. The cheerleaders and the football players, the drama kids, the band kids. There were different groups where people intermingled and hooked up within those groups. Now it's sort of everybody's connected on social media and everybody has access to everybody. And the people who aren't as socially competent, instead of having any group at all, they spend 12 hours a day on apps, on TikTok, on Instagram, and they have literally no social skills, and they don't go out after school and hang out and go smoke weed behind like a trailer somewhere like the rest of us did. You're just on your phone too much. Can you keep a significant amount of your muscle if you go on a diet while you're injured and unable to lift? That's really unlikely. You're more likely to lose a lot of muscle. And not only that, I would not recommend doing that because when you're in a calorie deficit, you have less biological building blocks to work with in order to heal from your injury. It's like asking construction workers to build a house with very limited supplies, and like they're only getting the supplies they need less often than they actually need them, and they're running out all the time, and they have to delay the job all the time. While you're injured, eat at maintenance and wait till you're healthy to diet. Any truth to low reps for density, high reps for a bubbliness? So I'm going to go on a limb and assume you got this from reading Dave's training log. But the real question is whether metabolic work, so rest pause, cluster sets, sets lasting longer than a minute, drop sets, things of that nature leads to a different look than lower rep sets. In the literature that's not really represented thus far, hypertrophy outcomes seem to be equal regardless of rep range. However, they do find more like acute swelling and inflammation in people who do use higher volumes and metabolite work, right? Now, anyone can take one look at powerlifters and bodybuilders, and even when they're the same size, you can see there's a different quality to the look of the muscle. The real question is whether that's because of training or it's because of genetics. But real talk, every good bodybuilder ever does both. Does it make any difference what angle you use on the bench when you do spider curls? I have been using a low incline. Would a high incline be any different? No, it shouldn't fundamentally change either the physics or the biomechanics of the movement, regardless of what bench angle that you use on spider curls. On the other hand, on this movement that I'm doing right here, the hammer front pull down, I have the seat all the way up, which does affect the physics. Because of the way I have it set up, this is hardest deep into the mid-range, and it drops off just a tiny bit at the short, but it's a short, mid-biased version of the hammer front pull down. Can an elite athlete in a pay-to-play sport still be considered a professional if they have to have a day job in order to survive? Honestly, who cares? Like, what are we, Merriam and Webster now, and we're like arguing over the dictionary definition of things? This is the exact type of that people like to talk about powerlifters, for example, to try to say that they aren't real athletes or to try to say that they aren't real professionals. Like, it's just words. It's just words. We all know whether or not somebody has accomplished great things in their sport. Just because someone doesn't earn their living fully from their sport doesn't mean they're not a great athlete. My gym isn't allowing me to use the GymPin. I have already worked up to 30 reps with the stack using a pause. How do I keep progressing? So first thing is put your adductor movement at the very end of the session after all your squatting and leg pressing, if you haven't already. You said you're pausing, but you didn't mention eccentric tempo. Use a 3 to 4 second eccentric tempo if you're not already. And last but not least, you can use band tension. Put a booty band around your knees if you need to. What do you look for when estimating body fat percentage? So you're going to look at separation between muscle groups, actual muscle definition. You're going to look for striations. You're going to look for fat storage in trouble spots like the lower back and lower abdomen. But really, you don't actually need to estimate a body fat percentage. If you're a hobbyist lifter, they're going to diet until you like how you look. And if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you have to diet until you have the right stage look. And then in the future, you can use pictures from your dieting period to estimate how much further you have left to go on future diets. You don't need to know a percentage. Do you have any stories about check drops? For those who don't know, check drops are basically this liquid that was created for game animals, like fighting dogs, fighting cocks, etc., to increase aggression, bloodlust, lower inhibitions, all that good stuff. And some psychotic powerlifters have taken to using it before meets. I don't have any stories for you though, sorry. Should I worry about insulin sensitivity when I'm bulking? If you're natural, not really. All you have to do, if you're male, keep your body fat below 18% or so. Female, maybe 25%. And keep your step count high and or do cardio at least 3 times a week, like 3 times a week, 30 minutes. And that's pretty much it. You're done. Get good sleep, boom. Now, if you're enhanced, a totally different story. If you're using HGH, you should actually be measuring your fasted blood glucose maybe twice a week. And you should have insulin on hand just in case you're getting into the unhealthy range. You can bring that insulin in and fix it right away. Do you still play chess? What's your ELO rating? No, I don't play chess. I haven't played chess for fun in many years. I literally don't play at all. I don't seek it out. If people are playing, I don't want to play. The only exception is if I'm playing with kids, teaching kids how to play. I like to teach people how to play when they're first starting, but competitive chess, absolutely not. No fun for me. I noticed that you dropped the chest-supported T-bar row. Why? Because I have access to this machine right here, the Strive row. In my opinion, the Strive row is the best machine row that there is. It's obviously just an older version of the newer Prime model that has rotating handles, and that newer Prime model is better. But even if this didn't have an adjustable resistance curve, it's just so smooth. And it does have an adjustable resistance curve, so just the best row there is. How do you mentally deal with online hate? When I was younger, I used to just talk right back to people. But the problem with that, of course, is that most people who troll are completely anonymous because they have terrible lives and they're unhappy. And that's the reason why they talk to other people, to make themselves feel better. That said, nowadays, I just block people because if you talk back and forth, that's fine if you have like 2 haters. But when you have 200 or 1,000, now you're spending all day talking to people and you start to wonder if some of what they're saying isn't really true. So in the end, you're not going to stress me out on my Instagram, on my phone, in my house. Goodbye, blocked. Which GymPin is most universal? So most machines will take the 10 millimeter, they have 10 millimeter holes, and that will fit in there very securely. And with that, you can get the Kingpin, which is the one that holds the most amount of weight. However, some machines have an 8 millimeter hole. And if you get the 8 millimeter one, you can't get a Kingpin, so the loading amount is smaller, the loading pin is shorter. But on machines that have a 10 millimeter hole, 8 obviously goes inside of 10. It won't be quite snug, but you can fix the snugness issue by like wrapping a paper towel around the end of it before you put it in the machine. So the 8 millimeter will fit in the most amount of machines. Any tips on transitioning from powerlifting training to hypertrophy training? So do a little bit of preparation, decide what system you want to use, read up on how hypertrophy training works, whether you want to do the Renaissance periodization style of RIR training or some sort of HIT system, it doesn't really matter. Just pick something and then you know what? It's time to rip the Band-Aid off and just start. The one thing I will say that most powerlifters struggle with, and something I definitely struggled with as well, is that the goal of hypertrophy training is different than powerlifting training. It's going to be hard to kick the habit that you're always supposed to use the most weight possible. When I first started doing these Q&As, people were constantly asking me, why isn't low bar better than high bar, even though you can lift more weight? Why isn't sumo good for hypertrophy if I can do more weight? In hypertrophy training, I wouldn't quite go this far, but it's a good way to think about it. It's almost like the least weight that you can lift and still get the right stimulus for the right muscle, the better. You can't sacrifice control for load. Have you ever felt discouraged with your rate of progress along your lifting journey? Man, I've been doing this for almost 14 years now, so I've experienced every single emotion, the entire spectrum of damn emotions when it comes to training. I felt like an utter failure and like I was on my way to ultimate victory and everything in between more times than I can count. What I can really tell you is that it just doesn't really matter. Like, you just stick to the process, try to make whatever improvements that you can, and you just keep moving forward. And the issue with a lot of younger lifters is that they're just consistently overestimating what they can accomplish in the next year and consistently underestimating what they could accomplish in the next 10 years with adherence. You're not going to bench 405 this year, but you might bench 455 10 years from now. If I want to lose weight in the off season as a power lifter, should I switch to bodybuilding style training to resensitize? To resensitize to what? No, you shouldn't do that. There's no time in powerlifting where switching completely over to a bodybuilder style of training is going to be what's best. Because while there may be a lot of similarities between hypertrophy training and hypertrophy training for powerlifting, they're just not the same thing. Hypertrophy training for powerlifting is going to involve focusing on carryover to the main movements. You'll have general focus on extended range of motion SBD variants, but you still need to pick things that target your weaknesses, not just general growth. All right, everybody. If you like the video, like the video. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. I answer all of them. Subscribe if you haven't already. And, of course, have a wonderful rest of your day. And I hope your arms grow, unlike mine.